What if the maid you hired to clean your house secretly turned out to be a genius, teaching your autistic daughter 9 different languages without anyone knowing? That's exactly what happened to one millionaire dad, and when he found out, everything changed in the most unbelievable way. Stick around, this story will shock you. James had walked into his home 100 times before, but this time felt different. The house was quiet at first until he heard a soft, melodic voice coming from the living room, one that wasn't quite familiar. It wasn't English, and it wasn't just one voice. It sounded like a back and forth conversation, like someone was teaching or repeating phrases. His curiosity piqued. James tiptoed closer, careful not to make a sound. As he neared the room, the voices became clearer. Spanish, no, French, now German. He slowly peered through the slightly open door, and what he saw made him freeze. There on the floor sat Rosa and Emily. A colorful spread of flashcards, picture books, and language posters surrounded them. Rosa was gently speaking to Emily in different languages, guiding her through each word with patience and joy. What shocked James the most wasn't just the fact that Rosa was fluent in multiple languages, it was Emily. His daughter, who had struggled for years to speak full sentences, was repeating words in perfect rhythm. She was smiling, engaged, focused, not overwhelmed, not withdrawn. She was thriving. James felt a rush of emotions hit him all at once: disbelief, awe, guilt, and amazement. He had spent so much time working, managing businesses and investments, believing that no one could help Emily truly connect. And yet, here was Rosa, quietly achieving what entire teams of specialists hadn't been able to accomplish. He stepped back for a moment, trying to process it all. How long had this been happening? Why hadn't anyone told him? And most importantly, who exactly was Rosa? In that quiet moment, James realized his life and Emily's was about to change in a way he never expected. Rosa's eyes widened as she slowly stood up, clearly unsure of how James would react. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained gentle. "Mr. Morgan, I didn't mean to hide anything. I was only trying to help." James took a step closer, still trying to make sense of what he'd witnessed. "Rosa, my daughter, is speaking fluently in multiple languages. She's never done this before. Not in therapy, not at school. How is this possible?" Rosa lowered her gaze for a moment before answering. "Emily has an incredible ear for sound. When I first started here, I noticed something unique. While most children repeat what they hear, Emily was mimicking tone, rhythm, and pronunciation with near perfection. I started with simple words in Spanish, my native language, and she responded so well, so quickly. So I introduced French, then German, and she just kept absorbing." James was stunned. For years, specialists had tried every method: visual aids, sensory tools, one-on-one instruction, and while there had been slow progress, nothing like this. Emily, now smiling, continued flipping through a book filled with symbols and characters. James noticed it was Mandarin. She pointed and softly whispered the word, and Rosa nodded in encouragement. "She loves it," Rosa continued, her voice more confident now. "It calms her, gives her structure. The more I taught her, the more she opened up. I didn't mean to keep this from you. I just didn't want to overstep. I thought maybe you'd think I was just the maid." James felt a wave of emotion crash over him. His daughter was learning, speaking, thriving, and it was all because someone saw her differently. Someone who hadn't judged her by diagnosis, but by potential. And that someone had been right under his roof all along. James took a step back, running a hand through his hair as he tried to gather his thoughts. The weight of Rose's words sank in slowly, and each one hit him harder than the last. "I'm just the maid." That sentence echoed in his mind. He looked at Rosa, not just as an employee now, but as someone who had been quietly shaping his daughter's future without asking for credit, payment, or recognition. She had seen something in Emily that even the best doctors and educators hadn't. Rosa had seen hope. "You're not just the maid, Rosa," James said finally, his voice soft but filled with emotion. "You saw something in my daughter that we didn't. You reached her in a way no one else could. That doesn't make you small, it makes you extraordinary." Rosa's eyes glistened, but she didn't speak. She simply nodded, humbled by his words. James walked over and looked at the scattered books and flashcards on the floor. Languages he couldn't even pronounce were now part of his daughter's growing vocabulary, all thanks to this quiet woman who had taken a risk because she cared. The guilt began to build inside him. How many moments had he missed? How many lessons had he overlooked while drowning in meetings and investor calls? Emily was his whole world, yet the person unlocking her brilliance had been someone he barely noticed each day. He knelt beside Emily, who smiled up at him and pointed to a Japanese flashcard. "Konnichiwa," she whispered sweetly. James smiled through misty eyes. In that moment, he wasn't thinking like a CEO or a millionaire. He was just a dad, realizing the greatest treasure he could ever invest in was right in front of him, learning to say hello in 9 different ways. In the weeks that followed, the Morgan household transformed into a place of learning, laughter, and new beginnings. James and Laura were no longer just parents desperately seeking answers. They had become students themselves, learning alongside their daughter as Rosa introduced them to a new perspective on Emily's mind. They soon discovered that Rosa's background was far more remarkable than they had imagined. Born into a family of educators, Rosa had grown up speaking 5 languages fluently by the time she was 16. She had a gift, not just for learning languages, but for teaching them in a way that was intuitive and emotionally engaging. Life's hardships, however, had forced her to take jobs far below her qualifications just to survive. She never complained, never demanded recognition. She simply continued sharing her knowledge wherever she could, especially with children who needed it most. Emily's progress was nothing short of astonishing. The little girl who once avoided eye contact and rarely responded to her name was now sitting at the dinner table, excitedly telling her parents the word for apple in Japanese, Spanish, and Italian. She began forming complete sentences in English, and even surprised Laura one morning with a cheerful "Bonjour, maman." Therapists and teachers who had once measured Emily's development in small, cautious steps were now blown away by the rapid strides she was making. The secret, it seemed, wasn't just in the languages, it was in Rosa's method. She didn't teach with pressure or expectation. She taught with love, patience, and the belief that every child, no matter their challenge, had brilliance waiting to be unlocked. The bond between Rosa and Emily grew deeper each day. What began as quiet lessons on the living room floor had blossomed into a powerful connection, one that was changing Emily's life and everyone else's forever. One evening, after another successful lesson, James sat down with Laura. They both looked at Emily, who was now confidently reciting words in multiple languages. For the first time in years, James felt a sense of hope. His daughter was thriving, and it was all thanks to the woman he had once seen as just a maid. "I never saw it," James admitted to Laura, his voice thick with emotion. "I was so focused on everything else that I didn't see what was happening right in front of me." Laura nodded. "It's amazing, James. Rosa has changed everything for Emily. We owe her more than we can ever repay." The next day, James called Rosa into his office. When she arrived, he stood up and extended his hand. "Rosa," he said, his voice filled with gratitude, "I want you to know that you're more than just our maid. You're part of this family. We'd like to offer you a full-time position as Emily's personal tutor. You've done more for her than anyone could have imagined." Tears welled in Rosa's eyes as she looked at James and Laura. "I didn't expect this," she said softly. "I just wanted to help." James smiled. "Well, you've done that. And more." From that moment on, Rosa became an integral part of their family, not just as a tutor, but as a mentor and a trusted figure in Emily's life. She had taught them all a valuable lesson. Sometimes the people you least expect have the power to change everything. If this heart-touching story amazed you, imagine how many more are out there waiting to be heard. So don't just scroll away. Smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the bell so you never miss a story that could inspire your day or even change your life. Got chills? Share this video with a friend who believes in miracles and drop a comment below. What would you do if you were that dad? Your support helps us keep bringing powerful, emotional stories that remind us of the beauty in unexpected places. See you in the next one.